Hi, Kelly.
Oh, hi.
Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. I sure can.
I'm gonna let people in here. Welcome, everyone. We're gonna get started in just a second here. Okay, Danny, I've made you a co-host, so if you notice people popping in, if you could let them in, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, you guys. Well, if you are looking for LinkedIn, you are in the right spot. I am going to record this session. So let me get that started.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So if I share my screen here. Can everybody see this okay? Wonderful. Okay, so I promise I am not going to do death by PowerPoint. There's going to be some slides that are screen captures of LinkedIn images. I'm going to skip over those because I am going to go live onto LinkedIn and kind of show you some of the stuff in action rather than just showing you some still photographs. So we'll start out with introductions. I'm Kelly Coughlin. I am the Senior Career Manager at the Office of Career Services within the Costello College of Business. And I'm here with Kelly Blaze from Enterprise, and she is going to quickly introduce herself.
Kelly Blaze with Enterprise Mobility. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager for the DMV area. We really work closely with George Mason and have hired lots of students into our management training programs, as well as our summer internships. We also have accounting positions as well. So we're always looking for great talent. So excited to work with Kelly today on beefing up your LinkedIn profiles.
Okay, so with that, we will go through here. I'm going to start on a few slides. Let me know if there's any issues. Please pop in the chat if anything's coming up. But did this proceed to the next slide for y'all? Did that work? Are you on slide 2 now, or are you still looking at my main screen? We're good? Yes, thanks, Danny. Okay, so why do we want to use LinkedIn? So LinkedIn is literally the largest networking site in the world. We will also find 70 to 80% of jobs through networking. So that is a big thing I talk about with students who come into the office of, you know, if they have applied for 100 jobs and they haven't heard anything and they can't figure out why they're not getting interviews. One of the questions I ask them is, who have you been networking with at the company? So Kelly, I'm sure that you have experienced that from the employer side. If you want to add anything.
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, hopefully as you've been attending career fairs, you've been taking advantage of when you do make an introduction, asking the recruiter or the representatives if you can link in with them. So that's great to have them at least in your I guess your list of contacts. But what's more important is that you follow up after the career fair and just touch base and just say, hey, we met at the George Mason career fair this past week. I'm very interested in learning more about those opportunities that we discussed and was hoping that we might be able to set up a time to chat or to interview. So I definitely recommend, first making the connections, but then also following up and sending them a message. Don't be shy about it. We get them all the time. And, honestly, those are the folks that we wind up, setting up interviews with. So I definitely recommend that for sure. Oh, the other thing I would add to that too, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this, but we do a lot of sourcing through LinkedIn. So we are also actively looking for top-notch candidates on LinkedIn as well. So we have recruiters that source for us, and they are looking for people that utilize LinkedIn and have a profile for matches for our company as well.
Perfect. And I'll be interested in your input. I will go over the algorithm that is used by a lot of those recruiters and what we want to have in our profile so that we kind of pop up as a match. So when we get to that section of the input there. So how many people are on LinkedIn? 1 billion. Okay, so LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network. As I mentioned, it is one of those platforms where you should not be seeing a whole lot of personal posts. There shouldn't be political posts. It should be purely a professional platform. And do you find people who violate that? Absolutely. So be careful what you put on there, because every employer and recruiter in the world can see what you've liked and what you've posted and all that good stuff. So it's really important to have that professional presence on there. And as we've talked about, just statistically speaking, you're more likely to get a job through networking than you are any other means. I met with a recruiter weeks ago who had about 15 internships and had received thousands of applications. And they said that they were really relying on people that they met through the career fair, who attended events that they were hosting. And then, Kelly, to your point, people who follow up, you met a ton of people at the career fair. You're not going to remember every single one of them. And so those, students who bother to follow up and continue that relationships are the ones who kind of stand out. And, we talk about 95% of recruiters using LinkedIn. Kelly, you mentioned that you have recruiters that you use for LinkedIn as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. They have their dedicated job is to source top-notch candidates, and LinkedIn is one of the sources that we utilize.
Okay, so one of the easiest things that you can do, if you have set up your LinkedIn profile, when you get your profile, it puts a whole bunch of garbage at the end of that URL. And it's super easy, and it looks much more professional if you take the time, which takes like 0.5 seconds to take that off. And I will go live and I'll show you where you can edit this. But that is one thing, because a lot of times we're going to put our LinkedIn URL at the top of our resume. And so we don't want this kind of string of nonsense at the end of that URL. We want it to look really clean and neat. So you can see the examples here. When you set that up, there's Mary Mason with SAD F234823, which takes up more space on a resume, doesn't look super professional. And so we can absolutely take off that end piece. Now, of course, just like when you're setting up an email account, sometimes your name's already taken. So you got to be a little clever. Maybe you put a dash there, maybe you add a middle initial. But these would be a great opportunity. And again, super simple. And I'm going to walk you through how to do this shortly. Okay, so we don't need to do this right now. Again, I am going to go live on the site, so you don't have to walk through this exercise just right now. But we do want to talk about headshots, because I'm sure some of you have seen some really good ones and some not so hot so ones. So LinkedIn profiles with headshots are 21 times more likely that the profile reviews. You get more connection requests, you get more messages, and unlike other social media platforms, you want people to find you, right? The whole purpose of this is to find employment, keep employment, help others get employment, stay in your network, become an expert in your area, tell others about it. So we want people to find us. This might be a good platform for, let's say, I don't want to connect to my old boss on Instagram or on Facebook or any of the other social media sites, but I do want to be on LinkedIn. because I might want to use her down the road as a professional reference, or maybe if she's connected to somebody I want to be connected to, and I can still use that connection. And if she switches companies, which she has done, I can still keep in touch with her. Callie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that just with I guess the headshot, just in general, you don't need to go and pay big money to have have a professional headshot done. But utilize your career services. I know some of them do offer those services. I feel like I've seen the LinkedIn booth at the career fairs in the past. So, that might be a great way. And my daughter, honestly, she just was doing her LinkedIn profile. And so I just snapped a few pictures of her. Again, just kind of in a professional setting, making sure she looked professional as well. And so you don't need to necessarily spend a lot of money getting a professional headshot done. Just make sure it's something that, looks good on the template, and, just shows you in a good light, of course.
We do have a headshot booth actually right in our lobby of career services. So that's 038 Enterprise Hall. So you just show up looking sharp, and it's all set up for you there. Anytime that we are open, you can go ahead and get your headshot taken. There's a nice screen in the background. You can just the machine has instructions. Take your picture and it sends it to you via email immediately. So I know Danny, who's on the call, seems to use it on a regular basis. So I think he's probably taking a picture of himself in every suit he owns. But anyways, it is useful and it's there for you to use, okay? So, and that's what it looks like. There is our little headshot booth on demand that you can find in 038 Enterprise Hall, okay? Don't, have the picture where you crop somebody out, or I have a lot of them where I was at a wedding and I want to say, I can tell. I see the boutonniere, I can tell, so.
Sometimes I'll see people with their partner, in the picture. It's like, no, it's not Facebook. Or Instagram, it's just you.
The other thing I mentioned back here too is that background photo, known as the LinkedIn banner. I would update that. There's different templates that you can find, but if you really want to kind of dazzle the employer, look up some. Canva has a ton of them for free. You can customize your own, and I'll show you some sample ones when we look up. But if you just have kind of like the bland gray background one, you're not really standing out. And you're trying to demonstrate, especially if you're like a marketing student, right? There's a golden opportunity to kind of show some of your marketing skills there. So these are just some examples of what that banner can look like. You can see on the left there, that's the generic one that everybody gets. But there are some really cool ones that are out there that are templates you are welcome to take for free. And you can see some of those examples, right? So I just put, so boring, does this person know how to use graphics or LinkedIn? And then versus, ooh, let's connect, okay? Okay, so the headline is the part on your profile that appears right under your name, and you get to make it whatever you want. That is nice. It does not automatically, like there's the two fields on the right that will automatically populate with your most recent job company, as well as your most recent school. But the headline, you get to make it creative. So a lot of times when I'm meeting with students, I see student at George Mason University. And what I tell folks is I don't know a recruiter out there who's hiring for a job called student at George Mason University, right? So we want to put in that headline, what are the job titles that you're looking for? This does factor into the algorithm being used by those recruiters. And you can still identify yourself as a student. You could say an accounting student seeking positions in auditing, finance, and budget management, but using keywords from some of those titles and job postings that you're looking for. I will say that the most creative one I saw, this is over 15 years ago, and it still sticks in my head. And it was somebody who was an IT trainer, and it said, IT training and development, the geek who can speak. And I just thought that was so clever, and it just sticks in my head to this day. And again, that was like over a decade ago. So if you're a creative person or can think of something cool, that would be another opportunity. Okay, and then there's a piece that I've noticed a lot of people missing on their profile, and this is the about section. This is going to be a little similar to some of the personal input you put on a cover letter with a professional summary that you sometimes see at the top of a resume. So here's a sample one. Information systems are my passion. From a young age, I've dabbled in anything tech, from building computers to designing web applications. My time as a systems engineer at Meter helped me hone my ability to design and implement network infrastructure and software. Here's my technical proficiencies. There's also a spot in there too where you can add actual skills. They have changed that recently, and you can do the same thing under your previous positions, and we'll see what that looks like. Kelly, anything that you tend to notice about people's summaries?
I mean, I think it's a lot of it is just the, where you get a little bit more creative with kind of letting us get a sneak peek of them a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to get too personal, but just sharing a little bit about, like in this one, you talked about their passion being information systems, kind of tying a little bit of personal with the professional aspect of what you want to do is always interesting to me, and just gets to see me a little bit more as a person. So we have maybe a connection there. But yeah, I love the one that you have here. I think it's great.
Okay, so in the about section tips, these are some things to keep in mind as you're creating your about section. How would you introduce yourself to an employer? How does this differ from your about section on LinkedIn? How would it be the same? If you were to write an about section on LinkedIn versus if you come up to Kelly at the career fair and introducing yourself. So it's like a little bit of personal pitch, elevator speech combined with the skills that you have to offer. Research job postings in your field and incorporate some of the keywords. So as we saw from the information systems friend earlier, those are the C++ and some other programs that are probably coming up as keywords in the job searches that they're doing. So they're tying that into their intro, okay? And again, one of the things that comes up, you don't have to have paid experience. You can talk about volunteer stuff. You can talk about courses you've taken, things that you learn in your courses, where you want to go. A lot of folks, and even when we get to the experience section on LinkedIn, they think I can only put paid experience in here, and that's just not true. So we'll get into that here. So on our experience section, we want to give information on our job history. One of the things that I find is a lot of times students have heard that they need to put their LinkedIn profile at the top of their resume. And so then they come in for a resume review and I click on that link and then I go to their LinkedIn profile and learn less about them, right? So I don't want to go from your resume that's you spent all this time making look beautiful, perfect, and then click on that LinkedIn profile and have a half complete profile that doesn't have half the experience or half the information that your resume does. I should be able to go to your LinkedIn profile, and the whole purpose of putting it at the top of that resume is so I can learn more about you, okay? So, and that experience section, which has to be tailored towards a specific company, a specific job title. If you are going for more, a different range, and I think most of us are when we complete school, and let's say I have an MIS degree, maybe I'm interested in data analytics, but also business analytics, but also cloud and all this other stuff. So your LinkedIn profile gets to be a little more general and wide ranging than the resume itself. Because your resume is going to be tailored for an applicant tracking system. Whereas our LinkedIn, we can make a little more broad. We can still pop up and use those keywords and pop up in those algorithms used by recruiters. And that's heavily using experience in the skills section, which we'll go into in a minute. But again, as I mentioned in the last slide, this does not have to be paid experience. We're going to list our accomplishments, not our job duties. If you remember, if any of you attended the resume workshops, there's a difference between a job duty and an accomplishment. So you start with the job duty and then tell me, what was the result? How many people did you help? Who did you work with? What were the skills and the strengths required to accomplish that job duty? And then that's how you get an accomplishment statement, okay? And so one of the things that comes up too, and this happens in resumes too, where I call it the so what. You write a accomplishment statement, and it doesn't seem like it's relevant to the job. or you want to read it and say, so what? Why would the employer care about this particular job duty statement? So I have, people who were working in service, and they talk about, the ability to mix 50 drinks, or things like that. So the memorization part of that is amazing, and that is a transferable skill. So I would highlight that piece of it, that skill in my accomplishment statement. I mentioned this sometimes before, if any of you have been in my previous workshops, but I used to work with people getting out of the military, and they would have these beautiful success statements like, hauled 50 tons of dirt across the desert in wartime conditions. And that's amazing. And that's not something anybody could do, but it doesn't relate to this business analytics position. Now, so then they ask themselves, so what? How does this relate? Do I need to just toss this out? Or are there some keywords from that business analytics job posting that relate to that? So what if one of the keywords was performs well under pressure? And so then I could say, performed well under pressure while hauling 50 tons of dirt across the desert in wartime conditions. And if that person can handle that and perform under that pressure, they can probably handle this business analytics job. But there is a way to incorporate some keywords. And sometimes there won't be. Sometimes they don't care that I made 50 drinks or had the recipe for this or that, or, when I was server, I could mop a floor in 20 minutes or whatever it was. But what are some of those transferable skills that were in that customer service type job that the employer would care about? Kelly, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, as far as adding to that, I think a lot of times, at least for us with most entry level positions, oftentimes the students will sometimes, not put those types of jobs on their resume, thinking that, again, it's not relatable, or they haven't found a way to spin it just right. But as an employer, especially if you're applying for something entry level, we're looking for experience. Any type of experience, if you've worked with customers, if you've worked in sales, those types of things can transfer. You may not have been able to articulate it, but we know that you have those skills. And so that is something that is very appealing to us. So again, it may not be a professional job that you've had, but I think it's still important to put it on there because, again, it's going to show us work ethic. It's going to show us people skills. It's going to show us problem solving skills, working under pressure, those types of things, which are all, I think skills that are transferable in many different industries. So I think it's valuable to put that. And then as you go along and you start to get more opportunities, more internships, more jobs, you can always update your resume. Your LinkedIn profile and your resume should always be evolving. So right now we don't expect you to have a ton on your resume. So you have to be able to put something on there. And I'd rather see that you worked at McDonald's for 4 years versus nothing, yeah, don't downplay your experiences is what I would say.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. That certainly comes up a lot in our resume workshop as well, where students feel like this doesn't pertain, so I'm going to leave it off. And we had a panel of marketing professionals, and they were talking about how they had 2 George Mason students that they were considering hiring, and they had the same coursework, and so they were having a hard time figuring out which one to hire. But one of them had been a waitress. And they had also been waitresses, and they knew what that skill set was that was required, and that would be an asset for that job. And so that's the person they went with. Now, if that person as a marketing student said, I'm going to leave waitressing off of here because it doesn't seem to pertain to this job, what a missed opportunity, because again, there are some really nice transferable skills. And when you are competing with other students, nothing breaks my heart more than I have the student at the end of their college career saying, I didn't volunteer, I wasn't in any clubs, I didn't work, I just focused on school. That is a really tough hill to climb because you are going to be in competition with a bunch of students who did do some of that stuff. So don't miss out on those opportunities. We can talk about the STAR statements, which is our accomplishment statement. So the STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. This is the same method you should use on your resume when you're creating lovely bullet points for that. So when we talk about, maybe let's see if I have my other example here. So for people who are in food service. I've seen this on a resume where they waited on tables and served food, and that is accurate. That is what they did, but that is a job duty statement. The success statement or the star statement version of that would be utilize strong communication skills, excellent order recall, and multitasking while serving 300 plus people a day, achieving a 99% guest satisfaction score. Okay. So those are the type of statements that you want on your resume, and those are the same type of statements you want on your LinkedIn profile in that experience section. All right, so now there is a section on LinkedIn on your profile where you can add coursework and projects. There's also a skills section. Again, I don't want to get heavy into screenshots of LinkedIn because we are going to go there live. But you can add coursework and projects to your LinkedIn profile, which is really helpful if, let's say, we don't have a ton of job experience, but we have done some pretty cool projects for school and different classes. We did a presentation, showcasing your public speaking skills and your ability to create a PowerPoint, and you spoke in front of 45 students, and you showcased that your deeper understanding of the course material, not just learned XYZ. Those are all really great opportunities and things that you could be working into that coursework and projects section. And on the right here, you can see for LinkedIn Learning, which you all have free access to. You can see the URL there on the left. All students have free access to LinkedIn Learning. After graduation, you should be able to get free access through the public library, okay? So this isn't the only opportunity, but boy, is this really helpful. And when we go, and I'll go into a couple different areas of LinkedIn where we can see kind of identifying gaps between the job we want and where we're at right now. And this is a really great opportunity for free in a short amount of time. You can look on some of those trainings on the right. One of them is only 41 minutes long. So you will find courses in any topic you're looking for, from Tableau and Power BI to how to answer tough interview questions, all that kind of good stuff. But lots of opportunities to build up your skill set, see what they're looking for. And there's a couple other tools I'll go into later as well. There is a section too. So if you notice on LinkedIn, there's an endorsements section, which means nothing. And then there's a recommendations section, which means something. So endorsements are not really well viewed by employers or recruiters. They don't put a whole lot of stock into the endorsements. And what you'll find in endorsements, and I'll show you live, is if you go to your skills, for example, our presenter Kelly could go to my profile right now and endorse me for resume writing. She knows that I'm a resume writer and I help people with that, but I've never written a resume for her. She doesn't know if I'm actually any good at it necessarily. So those endorsements don't really mean a whole lot. Like, anybody in the world can endorse me for something. It doesn't mean that they are a client of mine or, have any meaningful, but that's where the recommendations come in. When back in the day, and Kelly, maybe you'll remember this, when we applied for jobs, we used to be able to submit letters of recommendation, or that was often part of the recruiting process, and gone are those days. Now you'll find that, of course, when you apply for graduate school and stuff, you can submit letters of recommendation, that's a requirement, but for jobs, we don't really have that opportunity. So this is kind of this nice, sneaky, sort of backdoor way to get letters of recommendation in front of the employer's eyes, because people you're connected to on LinkedIn can write recommendations for you right on your profile. And I'll show you what that looks like. Kelly, have you seen those on people's profiles? And
Yes, absolutely. When I'm looking at the LinkedIn profiles, I'll take a quick scan, look at the recommendations, read them. So definitely something that we utilize as recruiters for sure.
Okay, and I'll show you in a minute too where you can find those. Again, you do have to be connected with somebody to get a recommendation, but this is why we want to be very generous, unlike other social media platforms where we're kind of picky and choosy about who we connect with. We want to be pretty generous on LinkedIn, connect with our former coworkers and former supervisors and people you're in class with and all that kind of stuff, because all of those are potential networking sources for you. So before we start networking though, this is where we want to make sure that we have a really slick looking LinkedIn profile. And really the resume is sort of that first piece. Once you have a fabulous looking resume, a lot of your LinkedIn profile, and for the students here working on Handshake, it's the same step for your Handshake profile. You're going to copy and paste a lot of these pieces, such as your professional summary translates to the about section. And there's one of those on both Handshake and on LinkedIn. For the experience section, you're going to have some gorgeous accomplishment statements. I would love to see those on your LinkedIn as well as your Handshake. So really that's kind of the foundation, and then you can use those to copy and paste to other platforms. So we want to make sure that profile is 100% complete, because once you start connecting to people, they're going to look. Kelly's looking. She just told you, right?
Yeah.
Every employer in the world can see this. So the only people who are seeing that resume are the people you submit it to. But remember, as I said, every employer and recruiter in the world can see your LinkedIn profile. So that should be looking just as good, if not even better, than your resume. So we want to talk about, personal pitch and elevator speech, researching, refreshing yourself on company news, because when we are going to start networking, we are going to want to, as Kelly mentioned too, we met at the career fair. I was so thrilled to hear that Enterprise is offering management internships, and I was intrigued by this and that, and we want to make a meaningful connection that way. So this is just some samples of how we can connect. When you have the free version of LinkedIn, you go to connect to somebody, and you never want to just do kind of a blind connection, because Kelly, if you're like me, if I get connections and they haven't attached a note to it, I don't really accept, because I don't know who this person is. I don't know why you're connecting to me. So those people who actually add that note are the people that I can, get an understanding of why are you connecting, and I'm sure I'm more likely to accept that request. Unfortunately, with that free version, there are some limitations. So you only get 200 characters to kind of do that little intro. So you got to be very concise. And then with the free version, last I checked, you could only add that note to like 5 connection requests per month. If you have the paid version, you get more. Now, keep in mind, you do get a free month of the premium LinkedIn version. So if I was in the hardcore job search phase, I would absolutely take advantage of that, because then I can connect to more people, add more notes and things like that. But do remember, because it'll take your credit card information, to shut that down before your husband calls you on a Saturday and says, "Did you charge $70 to LinkedIn?" And oh, I forgot to cancel that subscription. So, but here's a couple examples of how you can reach out. Hi, I'm Mary, management student at GMU. I'm looking for advice on landing my first management job. You have 15 minutes the next 2 weeks to chat. Here's my email. So the email proves that they actually are a GMU student. And then there's what we call that call to action. It kind of forces the other person to respond, rather than just, "Hey, it's great to connect with you," and then your conversation has died. One of the things we're going to go over in a minute here is the importance of connecting with other alumni. There is a huge network out there. And so the second example, my name's Marty, I'm a business student at GMU. I noticed you're a GMU grad as well. I'd love to connect and gain any insights you have on breaking into this industry, on this particular company. What were the lessons learned? How did you go about your job search? Can we schedule a brief call or virtual coffee? So we want to start networking. Always thank them for their time. And then at the end of each of these meetings, we'll go into that in more detail in a minute here, I want recommendations. Who else should I be talking to? How did you go about this? What other companies should I be considering? I have personally used this approach, and I have helped people find employment using this approach. Quick story, when I mentioned, I was working with military spouses and veterans, I had people reach out to me on LinkedIn I've never met in my life. They wanted to meet for 15 minutes. We had a quick chat. They were interested in a position at my company. I was not in recruiting. I was not talent acquisition, anything related. But they seemed like they were really with it. And we had one thing in common. We were both military spouses. And so I did an internal recommendation for them for those particular jobs that they were interested in, just because they made a good impression. That internal recommendation guaranteed them an interview with my company. And in both of those cases, they were hired. So it does pay off. I do put my money where my mouth is. And I've used this approach myself in one of my previous jobs. I reached out. I didn't know anybody in the area. We were moving. Reached out to anybody who was in career services, and ended up talking with somebody who was on the hiring committee. And, it worked out. But it is an effective strategy and it feels so much more empowering than sending a resume off into the abyss and then just sitting back and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. Kelly, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do have a few messages that were sent to me from a couple of events I've done this week. So I do need to go back and reply. That's on my to-do list today. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a great way. You just never know. Keep in mind, the recruiters do get lots of messages, so it may take them a little bit of time to get back to you, but it's a great way for you to, again, keep that conversation going. And again, it really shows interest. We get tons of applications, tons of resumes, lots of interest in our opportunities, and it's really these folks that kind of take it to the next level that get those, get the opportunity to get that interview. And or we get to learn a little bit more about them and maybe point them in the right direction in terms of where they would most fit within the organization. So definitely take advantage of following up and keeping the conversation going for sure. Another little side thing I would add, and I don't know if this is built into the presentation as well, but we talked about linking in with the recruiter or with the hiring managers, or just building that network with other organizations. But also make sure you're following the company as well. So follow the company. A lot of times they will post a lot of great content. That you'll get maybe first dibs on internship opportunities. Sometimes those will be posted through LinkedIn. So it's a great way for you to show your interest, because a lot of times when I am looking at students that have sent me a message, I also look to see if they're following the company. Sometimes I'll do targeted searches to see who's following Enterprise of my contacts and reach out to them as well. So just another little thing that you should do. I think that's helpful.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as we mentioned earlier too, there are some of those things that factor into the algorithm used by recruiters, and following the company is absolutely one of those things that pops up. So we will cover that as well when we go live there. Again, these are screenshots. I am not going to bore you with screenshots because it makes much more sense, but there's a very cool alumni tool within LinkedIn that I'm going to show you. There's some additional resources. I will send this PowerPoint out to everybody attending, so make sure that you have checked in, obviously through Handshake, so that I have the list of who's attending here. But Career Explorer, I'm going to show you live. That is a really great tool for finding skill gaps, as well as what skills should I be putting on my resume and my LinkedIn profile. The future of skills is a very similar LinkedIn Learning. We've already talked about, but you have free access through Mason, so it's a great way to build your skills. I did record a LinkedIn session earlier, but we are recording this one too. And then there is a sample LinkedIn profile out there. So this is us on social media. This is our Instagram and our LinkedIn page. Why would you want to follow on here? As Kelly said, sometimes we post jobs on there that you won't find on Handshake or other places. So I would take a second to make sure that you're following us on our LinkedIn page, and as well as our Instagram, because we do post positions on there where sometimes the employer reached directly out to us and we said, hey, can you just blast this out to the business students only? And we'll put it up on our socials, because I don't want to post it in shape of 7,000. So make sure that you follow those. And then any questions? Again, we're going to go live and LinkedIn here, so don't check off just yet or sign out. But what do we help you with? Obviously, we can do one-on-one appointments as well as drop-ins. Any of the topics you see, anything you can help with. So cover letters for resumes and LinkedIn, as we do here. Networking, I can help you with your Handshake profile, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's go to LinkedIn. I'm going to fire that up here and share my screen. I can tell you it is no fun to be doing a LinkedIn presentation in front of a class, in front of a different computer, and you can't remember your LinkedIn password. I have done that Okay, so what were you find on LinkedIn? Well, check this out. We were just talking about following us on LinkedIn, and we do student spotlights. So here's a student from the Office of Career Services at Costello who landed, I'm guessing, an internship. Yep, an audit intern. And so we are highlighting this student. So we do some of that on our profile as well. Again, ideally, you won't have any political or personal posts on here. So for the most part, what we should be seeing, let me see a little political one up here. Does it have anything? Oh, something to do with manufacturing. Okay. So here is good old LinkedIn. This is what your feed looks like. I'm going to pop up on, if you go here to your profile, you're welcome to bring up your own page here. But if you go up here to your picture, view profile, as I mentioned, I'm going to walk you through really fast how to edit your URL. So if you look over here on the right, it says public profile and URL. And if you click on the little pencil on the next page, it says edit your custom URL. And if you click right there, you get to take all that noise off the end of your URL. Again, somebody already grabbed your name. I'm sure there's some Kelly Coglins out there who are, irritated with me because I grabbed it first. But you can put a dash in between here, a middle initial. But as soon as you go to save, it'll tell you whether that's already taken or not. That's just a really quick and easy way to customize your URL. This is the little word cloud I created for my banner, as well as a professional headshot. I may have had that taken before I had children and a lot of frown lines in my forehead, but there it is. And then we have our headline here. So as I mentioned on this right, you can see the University of St. Thomas. That was the last school I attended, so it's automatically populating over there. And then of course, George Mason up here is my most recent employment, so that's automatically populating there. But I get to make this headline whatever I want. And so I put senior career manager, veteran and spouse advocate. You can, again, be more creative than I am. So what you can do, as I mentioned, one of the things we want to do is get some recommendations. So I'll show you where those appear, and then I'll show you how to get them. Let's scroll through step by step here. Here's the About section. This is where this appears. And again, I do believe they've added something where some of the bolded skills will appear underneath here. I need to update that on mine. As you can see in your experience section, you do get that same thing where you can attach skills that you've used in each particular job. Unlike on the resume, I get to go back and have as many, bullet points as I want. I'm not trying to keep this to 1 to 2 pages. I get to kind of be more in depth. I won an award at a previous job, so I have uploaded that document. So that's something kind of cool you could do. Here's a certificate of appreciation. I did work a million years ago for an AmeriCorps position at Goodwill, and I wasn't connected with my old boss on LinkedIn at the time. So they wrote me a letter of recommendation, and I just attached it under this previous job I held. So if you have some old ones you want to add in there, you certainly can. But that's sort of what that experience section looks like. And here's some bullet points. You can't type a bullet point directly into LinkedIn. You need to put them in Word and then copy and paste them over. But I do recommend doing that because if you just have a big clump of text, it's not really going to stand out to the employer. Here's my education. You can add licenses and certification. You can add a volunteer work. In fact, if you were here, you could probably hear this foster dog, my adopted failed foster dog yapping in the background. Down here is the skills section. This factors into the algorithm used by recruiters. Okay, so this is how it works. They are going to look for the title of the job that they're trying to fill. If you've never had that title, that's okay. You can put it up here in your headline. You could put it somewhere in your About section. But if you are seeking those job titles, make sure you have them somewhere on your profile. They're also going to be looking for the skills and the keywords that match that job description they're looking for. You can put those in your experience, and I highly recommend you put them in this skills section. Now, employers, and Kelly, you can back me up on this. You don't read the skills section. I'm not going to read. You can actually max it out at 100. It's not necessarily that this is something that recruiters are pouring through. It's a matter of matching. It's going to be used for two purposes. One, the algorithm used by recruiters, they're scanning your skills section, looking to see if you're a match. And then when LinkedIn is making job recommendations, it's going to tell you you're this match, you're sort of a match for this job. You're not really a match for this job. It's going to make recommendations based on what's in your skills section. So you can absolutely max this out. And you can see this is what I'm talking about with this kind of useless endorsements. Under career counseling, here's a couple people who endorsed me for that. Some people endorsed me for resume writing. And I bet you, here's John O'Phelan, which is very lovely, that I used to work with him, and he recommended me or endorsed me for resume writing, but I've never written a resume for John in my life. So, it's not a lot of value to that. However, here are the recommendations. And now by putting my LinkedIn profile at the top of my last resume, I snuck 20 letters of recommendations in front of the employer. And these are people who I worked with, people who worked with me, people who were, my employees, or people who were my colleagues. And you can ask people for recommendations. So how do we get recommendations on a profile? You click on this add profile section. And then under recommended, it says add recommendations. And it's going to say, okay, of everybody you're connected to, who would you like to ask? And I'm going to ask Heather, my old boss. I'm going to say, okay, how does she know you? Well, she was my manager. What job was I in at that time? And now I get to personalize it. And this is helpful because I can tell Heather, hey, I'm looking for career counselor jobs. Can you write a recommendation for me highlighting my resume writing ability, ability to build rapport with students, as well as, my teaching workshop style or something like that. Otherwise, Heather would say, Kelly was great. And she showed up to work every day. She had a positive attitude, lovely to work with. And that's not quite as effective. Kelly, what are your thoughts on that?
Thoughts on, I'm sorry, I could barely hear for a second there.
Sorry, that's okay. When you ask for recommendations, kind of tailoring that recommendation request so that the person writing the recommendation knows what you're looking for and what to put on your profile.
Yeah, I apologize. For some reason, you're like faded out at some points during the presentation. So I really am struggling to hear. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Is anybody else having issues with the sound?
It like fades out. It just started.
Okay. Was it through the whole thing or just recently?
Oh, no, I've just heard it now. A little from time to time, but it's like, yeah.
Some of the time. Okay.
Yeah. I know you're talking about recommendations and requesting the recommendation. Is that what you were alluding to, like how to phrase what you're asking for?
Mostly just like the value of tailoring your approach when you're asking for a recommendation so that they know what to write, so that the person writing the recommendation knows what you're asking for.
Oh, yes. It's definitely helpful to give them guidance. So that way, like you said, it's not generic or, vague. So, absolutely maybe giving them some suggestions on, areas to focus on and what you're hoping to achieve. And if, giving them a little bit of help, I think is always going to be, result in a better recommendation that has been written for you. So yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I apologize. As I said, it fades like a little bit, especially after we're chatting for a minute. So I don't know.
Well, I will speak up and hope that helps. I know some other people too just posted too that's the same
Yeah.
issue. So let me speak up and hope that helps a little bit. So as I mentioned, we can use what's called the alumni tool on LinkedIn. And so if we pull up good old George Mason Costello College of Business, and we look halfway down their page, what do I spy with my little eye but this alumni tab? And so if we click on the alumni tab, it's going to give us the top 5 employers that these alumni work at. So this isn't an all-inclusive list. If I want to see, obviously there's some alumni who work for, let's say, Amazon, and I want to make friends with them. So I'm going to put up here in the search bar, AWS or Amazon. Here they are. And if I click on that, and I scroll down, here they are. So these are all George Mason alum, either currently working on Amazon or people who have worked at Amazon in the past. And if I want to make some meaningful connections here, I can go to connect. I can click on add a note. And this is where I have to be short and sweet. Now, because I have the premium version, I actually have 300 characters. But if you have the free version, you only have 200 characters to work with. So we talked about the approach that we can use and what we can write there. And so, Kelly, what would be an example of what you would use there?
I would just say, hi, Mitch, I am currently a junior or senior at George Mason University. I saw that you are an alumni of George Mason and are working in, I can't tell what field they are applying to, but we were working in the IT department. And I have a high interest in, working in the IT department. I was wondering if we might be able to chat about maybe some different opportunities that you have for internships or even job opportunities, or how you started your career path within Amazon, and wanted to see if we might be able to connect or something along those lines. Of course, that is not how I would word it. I'd have more time to think about it. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. But something along those lines. I know there were some great templates that were shared earlier that were simple and to the point, but definitely just saying that you came across in your research that they are an alumni of George Mason, that you two are about to be graduating or will be graduating in the future, and have interest in working for Amazon, and you're curious about how to potentially get connected with Amazon.
Yeah. Another thing you can use this for too is if I want to figure out, let's say I want to see what the other accounting students, what they ended up doing and where they ended up getting hired. So I clicked on accounting, and here it pops up with, here's the top 5 companies that hired accounting students from George Mason. I can click on any of these. Again, I can add other companies and just see who, who's working where, which, companies were kind of student friendly in hiring. And then that's how I can kind of make some connections there. You can also, for free, look up companies by name. So let's say I want to work at Deloitte. So I pull up Deloitte. I click on their 10,000 plus employees. And then I can add, ooh, there's a recruiter. I can add some really nice filters. So up here on the right, it says all filters. So I can add job titles. I can add schools. If I'm former military, I could put in who's worked for the United States Navy, Marine Corps, whatever branch I was in. So this is a really great tool for figuring out who to connect with. So maybe I want to find if they have a recruiter who's also an alumni. Maybe I'm interested in being a business analyst. So I want to know if they have a business analyst there I can talk to, especially when that's an alumni. So I get to add some really cool filters here.
Mm-hmm.
And then before I let y'all go, I know our time is winding down here, but I did want to make sure I showed you the LinkedIn Career Explorer tool, which I did mention. I'm going to pop this in our chat as well. So this is the really cool Career Explorer tool. If you scroll down, you got to go through all the noise here. They had a lot of fun creating this. But you get down to here, and this is going to help you in a couple different ways. We're going to put in DC, and I'm going to put in business analyst, because I want to be a business analyst and I need to figure out what should I have on my resume? What skills should I have on my LinkedIn profile? So if I type in that job title there, it'll tell me these are the skills that pop up most commonly with business analyst positions. And so if I have some of these skills, I'm going to want to include those in my skills section and maybe in my resume. But if I don't have some of these skills, that's where that LinkedIn Learning really comes in handy. Because then I can click on these, look up these topics on LinkedIn Learning, and maybe do a quick little 1 hour session. And then I can put on my resume and on my LinkedIn profile, I have knowledge of this. I've seen it in action. May not have had, 10 years work experience with it, but I am familiar with it. So that's a really good way to identify. And this also helps if you run into job announcements that are super vague, and they just say, looking for an accounting alum with a GPA of 3.5 or above and on a CPA track. Okay, that's not, not many of those are real keywords to incorporate. So I got to spell this correctly, but you might want to put in accountant. And now it's going to give you some of these skills that they might be looking for that weren't in the job announcement. The other thing that's a really cool part of this is if I'm wanting to be a business analyst, here's the skills that are connected with this, but it's going to say, hey, if you want to be a business analyst, check out these other 100 jobs because they have a very similar skill set. So if you're interested in being a business analyst and you have this skill set, check out being an IT business analyst or a business analyst, analysis manager, or a solutions analyst. And then you can just click on these buttons to find jobs in that field on LinkedIn. Okay. So this is also a handy tool. They call it the job transition tool as well, because if I was a business analyst and I want to go into something that's different, but sort of related skill set wise, I can use these 100 job matches to bring up. Okay. So that's how you're going to use the LinkedIn Career Explorer tool. Okay. That is it. Again, I will send out this PowerPoint. I do have, Kelly, if you want to talk for a minute about the internship program, the training program that you offer, I'm going to pull up that QR code if that works for you.
Sure thing. At Enterprise, I guess first off, if you're not familiar with Enterprise Mobility, most folks know us as Enterprise Rent-A-Car. We own National and Alamo as well. But my primary job is to staff our locations in the DMV area. I am currently recruiting December grads as well as May grads for our management trainee program. So this is for folks that want to learn about how to manage and run a multi-million-dollar transportation operation. Again, we do a lot of things. We have a great program that is designed to help prepare you to learn all the different aspects of the business. So customer service, sales, operations, logistics, a little bit of accounting and finance. So we do have entry-level positions there. We are also recruiting currently for our summer internship for summer 2026. And spots are limited. So if you are a rising senior, this might be the opportunity for you. And again, this is kind of a sneak peek of our management development program, where you'll have hands-on experience in the summer. Of course, it's paid. You'll do a project that is designed to help improve a process or a result within the business. We have lots of training in customer service and communication style and also sales, along with many other activities that you'd be doing throughout the summer. It's a very interactive internship. It's not just filing papers and doing busy work. It could also lead to a job offer, which is always great. And then lastly, I would also say we are currently recruiting for a staff accountant intern. This position would be located